If your destiny is being tampered with in the spirit realm, it never starts with what you see. It begins in the places you don't look, the moments you ignore, the shifts you feel but can't explain. Before a life collapses, before a door closes without warning, before a season of blessing suddenly dries up, the spirit realm always sends signs. Some come quietly, some come through people. Some appear in dreams that leave a shadow on your mind long after you wake up, but they all point to one thing. Someone has reached for what belongs to you. Behind the scenes, something darker was moving, something far more damaging than anyone around you could detect. Or so it seemed. Most people walk into these signs without ever recognizing the danger. Most never realize their destiny was touched until the damage has already begun. And that is why understanding these 5 signs is no longer optional. Because once these signs appear, you are already on a spiritual timeline. And those stages always reveal themselves. The first sign looks harmless, you won't even suspect it. The second sign is when the interference becomes visible. The third sign is the one that almost destroyed a young preacher. And until today, he still doesn't know what happened to him. The fourth sign is the witch's favorite doorway. They use it because it is nearly invisible. But the fifth sign, that one is the clearest and the most dangerous. It is the one that exposes everything. If you see that fifth sign, someone has already touched your destiny. After years inside the occult, after years walking through spiritual corridors most people never even believe exist, and after years counseling believers who came to me with eyes full of fear, voices trembling, not knowing why their lives were collapsing, I learned something I can never unsee. Destiny tampering is not random. It is not sudden. It is not accidental. There is always a pattern, always a sequence, always a quiet spiritual footprint that appears before the real damage begins. I've watched this pattern unfold in people who love God sincerely, people who fasted, people who prayed, people who served, people who were genuinely trying. And yet, something invisible kept touching their lives, rearranging things they didn't even know could be touched. I remember sitting in front of a young woman once, her hands shaking, her voice weak. She came to me saying, "I don't understand what's happening. Every time I'm close to a breakthrough, something pulls it away." And while she was talking, I saw it. The same pattern I had seen in the occult. The same spiritual sequence used over and over again to weaken someone's destiny before the final blow. And the painful part? She had no idea it had already started. I've watched men lose clarity overnight. I've watched women who were once bold become suddenly silent. I've seen young people go from prophetic dreams to nightmares. I've seen homes filled with peace become battlegrounds. I've seen opportunities vanish in ways that make no logical sense. And every single time, every moment, every story, I recognize the same fingerprints. Because when I was on the other side, they taught us, if you want to stop someone's destiny, don't attack their life first. Attack the atmosphere around their life. Twist it quietly. Touch invisible things. Shift what they cannot see. Years later, when I stepped out of the kingdom of darkness, I began to hear the same cries, coming from believers who didn't know how to explain what was happening to them. They would say, "I feel tired for no reason. I don't recognize myself anymore. I dream things I never used to dream. People turn against me suddenly, and I don't know why. My opportunities collapse the moment I get close to them." And each time, I felt that same heavy reminder in my spirit. They're following the pattern again. Spiritual attacks don't begin loudly. They don't begin with thunder. They don't begin with fear. They begin with small, almost invisible shifts, little cracks in the walls of destiny, a sudden fog in the mind, a sudden heaviness in the soul, a sudden disconnection from purpose, a sudden silence in the dream realm, a sudden wave of strange people entering your life. These are the fingerprints. These are the clues left behind. These are the traces most people ignore. I've sat across from pastors, strong men, and listened to them whisper, "Something is wrong, and I don't know what it is." I've prayed with women whose destinies were shining only months before, yet now they could barely recognize their own voice. I've spoken to young men who were once on fire for God, but now felt like they were sinking into something they couldn't name. And every single time I would feel that same slow ache in my chest. The ache of recognition. Because I knew the signs, I knew the stages, I knew the system. Destiny tampering is organized, it is strategic, it is intentional, and it always leaves marks. Marks that most believers walk past without noticing. That's why I speak calmly, not to scare you, but because I've seen what happens when someone realizes the signs too late. I've watched destinies suffocate quietly. I've watched spiritual gifts fall asleep. I've watched joy drain out of people who once carried light. Not because they were weak, not because they were careless, but because they didn't recognize the early signs. When you've lived on both sides of the spiritual world, when you've stood in darkness and later fought to pull people out of it, you learn that the greatest threat to destiny is not the attack itself, but the blindness toward the attack. I don't speak as a teacher. I don't speak as a preacher. I speak as someone who has seen the blueprint. As someone who once participated in the blueprint. As someone who now exposes the blueprint. And if there is one truth I want you to understand before we go deeper, it is this. Destiny tampering does not begin when your life falls apart. It begins long before that, with signs so subtle, so silent, so spiritual, that only someone who has walked through that realm notices them. I've watched too many destinies crumble quietly. I've seen too many people waking up at the edge of their own destruction. I've seen too many breakthroughs stolen like smoke in the wind. That is why I'm revealing this. Calmly, clearly, honestly. Because the truth is simple. If you can recognize the pattern early, you can break it early. If you can read the signs, you can stop the interference. If you can catch the fingerprints, you can reclaim everything that was meant for you. And before this video ends, you will know all 5 signs, not the vague signs people talk about, but the real ones. The dangerous ones. The ones I saw used repeatedly in the realm of darkness. The ones believers rarely notice until it is almost too late. Because your destiny is too valuable to be touched in silence. Your life is too important to be rewritten secretly. And your purpose carries too much weight to let invisible hands shape it without your awareness. So listen carefully, not with fear, but with understanding. Because once these signs become clear to you, the enemy's access to your destiny becomes exposed. And once it's exposed, it can be shut permanently. The first sign is subtle, so subtle that most people ignore it. It slips into your life quietly, like a shadow on the wall. You feel it before you see it, and by the time you notice it, something has already shifted in the spirit. The second sign doesn't hide, it exposes you. It exposes your atmosphere. It exposes the weak places you didn't know you had. And when that second sign shows up, the enemy already knows you've been marked. The third sign, that one is heavy for me, because it almost destroyed a young preacher I once knew. A man with a bright destiny, fire in his voice, purpose written all over him, until the third sign appeared. And when it appeared, everything in his life changed in one night. The fourth sign is the one witches rely on the most. It's quiet, it's invisible, and it works. They use it because 90% of believers never recognize it until it has already opened a doorway that should have remained shut forever. But the fifth sign is the one they hope you never discover. Because once you see it, the whole system behind the attack becomes exposed. Once you recognize it, every manipulation collapses. Once you name it, the interference loses its power. And this fifth sign is the reason many destinies are stolen quietly. Not because believers are weak, but because no one ever told them what it really looks like. You're about to see all 5, one by one, exactly how they appear in the spirit realm, and exactly how they tamper with your destiny before you even notice something is wrong. She was the kind of woman people described as promising, hardworking, focused, prayerful. Whenever she talked about her future, you could hear confidence in her voice. Doors opened for her easily. People liked her. Opportunities followed her. But then, something changed. It started slowly, almost unnoticeably. She would wake up with a strange heaviness she couldn't explain. She thought it was stress. She thought it was lack of sleep. She thought it was normal, but it wasn't. Because overnight, her life began closing, one door at a time. A job she was certain she would get suddenly went to someone else. A relationship that was stable suddenly broke without reason. People who once loved her presence began withdrawing from her. Friends became distant. Opportunities disappeared. It felt like every step forward turned into 2 steps backward. She didn't know it then, but her destiny had already been touched. The dreams came next. Strange dreams, unsettling dreams. Dreams that didn't feel like dreams. She said she kept hearing a voice calling her name, a voice she didn't recognize. Sometimes it sounded like a woman. Sometimes a man. Sometimes a whisper so close to her ear that she would wake up sweating. And in these dreams, she was never alone. There were shadows around her, figures she could not see clearly, faces she could not remember. But she woke up afraid. During the day, her mind became cloudy. She would forget simple things. Her thoughts felt scrambled. She began doubting herself, doubting her decisions, doubting her worth, doubting her purpose. It wasn't depression, it wasn't anxiety, it was a spiritual fog, a deliberate clouding of her destiny. People turned against her without explanation. Accusations she never heard before started flying. Conversations happened behind her back. Even family members grew cold. Everywhere she stood, it felt like she was standing in the wrong place. One night, after another opportunity slipped through her fingers, after another person she trusted suddenly turned their back, after another disturbing dream, she sat on the floor of her room and cried. Not the loud kind of crying, but a quiet breaking, where the tears fall slowly and you can feel your own heart shaking. And in that stillness, something inside her whispered, "Pray." But not the way you usually pray. She didn't understand it fully, but she obeyed. She didn't use her normal words. She didn't follow her usual routine. She simply said with a trembling voice, "God, something is wrong. Show me what I'm fighting." And that night, for the first time in months, her dream was clear. No shadows, no fog, no confusion. She saw a room she had never entered before. A circle of people she did not recognize. And in the center of the circle was her name, written on something that was never meant to hold it. One of the figures tried to hide it, another tried to cover it. But it was too late. She woke up with her heart pounding. But her spirit was calm for the first time. Because she understood. Her destiny had been tampered with. But now, the tampering had been exposed. The next morning, something shifted. The heaviness lifted. Her clarity returned. Her confidence rose again. The fog broke. The silence in her dreams ended, and the doors that were shut began to open again. Because once the source of the interference was exposed, the power of that interference broke completely. This is how destiny tampering works. Quietly, slowly, invisibly. But once the pattern is recognized, once the signs are seen, once the source is exposed, the destiny that was locked can open again. Before I reveal the first sign, you need to understand something important. Something most people never notice until it is too late. Destiny attacks rarely start loudly. They don't announce themselves. They don't come with thunder, with shadows on the wall, or with the obvious signs we grew up imagining. No, the most dangerous spiritual attacks start silently, quiet, almost gentle, like a whisper brushing past your ear while you sleep, like a thought that doesn't feel like yours, but you let it stay because it seems harmless. Witches who tamper with destiny never begin with destruction. They begin with disruption. They don't steal the whole plan at once, they touch one thread. Just enough for your life to begin unraveling on its own. That is why so many people think it's just stress, or just bad luck, or just a phase. But there is no just when a destiny is being monitored. There is no coincidence when your steps begin to fall out of alignment. There is a pattern. There is a sequence. There is always a first doorway they test, a second doorway they weaken, a third doorway they pierce, and by the time you realize what's happening, you're already living in the outcome of a dream you didn't choose. Let me tell you something most spiritual people never hear. The enemy never wastes energy on someone without a future. If your destiny wasn't bright, no one would monitor it. If your name didn't carry weight in the spirit, no one would whisper it in the night. Attacks don't come because you are weak, they come because you are marked. Marked for influence, marked for greatness, marked for a path that, if fulfilled, would break cycles in your bloodline. So instead of fighting you in the open, they watch you in the shadows. They trace your movements, your emotions, your fears, and especially your dreams. Dreams reveal alignment. Dreams reveal openings. Dreams reveal the direction your destiny is leaning toward. And that is why destiny tampering begins there, where your guard is lowest, where your spirit is most exposed, where your mind is awake even while your body sleeps. It is the one battlefield most people never prepare for. And here's the part most people miss. The earliest signs of a destiny attack don't show up in your finances or your relationships or your opportunities. They show up in your patterns. In the way you suddenly start waking up tired, in the way your dreams shift from clear to confusing, in the way your emotions begin reacting to things that shouldn't bother you, in the way your clarity becomes fog, your confidence becomes hesitation, your peace becomes restlessness. This is why you must understand this before I reveal the first sign, because if you don't recognize the silent beginning, you will never see the loud ending. If you don't understand the nature of the attack, the signs won't make sense. You'll hear them, but you won't feel them. You'll know them, but you won't recognize them in your own life. Destiny attacks don't start when everything falls apart. They start when something small shifts. Just enough for your spirit to become unsettled. A delay that shouldn't have happened. A sudden coldness from someone who once supported you. A strange dream you forget the moment you open your eyes. A name being called faintly in your sleep. An atmosphere around you that feels slightly off, but you can't explain why. These things accumulate quietly. They stack on top of each other until the picture becomes clear. But by then, most people are already knee-deep in confusion, already questioning themselves, already doubting what God said about them. And that is why you need to hear this next part without distraction. Because once you understand how silently these things begin, once you understand how softly they slip in, once you understand the strategy behind the silence, you will finally understand why these 5 signs are so dangerous. The first one is subtle, the kind of subtle that makes you doubt your own discernment. The second one exposes you. It reveals something the enemy hopes you never pay attention to. The third one almost destroyed a preacher I once knew. A man strong in prayer, but blindsided by one tiny spiritual crack he assumed didn't matter. The fourth is the one witches rely on the most, the one they test repeatedly because it gives them the clearest access. And the fifth? The fifth is the one they pray you never discover, because once you understand it, the entire attack collapses. I'm going to walk you through each one, slowly, carefully, so you can identify where the tampering began and how to close it. But before we go deeper, listen to me. Nothing happening in your life right now is random. There is a pattern. There is a reason. And you are about to see it. The mind is the first battlefield witches target. If they can bend your thoughts, they can bend your decisions. And if they can bend your decisions, they can bend your destiny. That is why the first sign of spiritual tracking is always subtle, invisible, almost innocent looking. Sudden loss of direction. A spiritual fog that settles over your mind without warning. Not depression, not stress, but a heaviness that makes even simple choices feel impossible. When this attack hits, nothing feels clear anymore. You wake up, but it feels like your thoughts are still half asleep. You know what you want to do, but something inside you keeps second-guessing every step. You feel pulled in different directions at the same time, like someone has reached into your spirit and twisted the compass. The things that used to excite you suddenly feel distant. The goals that once felt easy now feel complicated. Even praying feels like walking through smoke. I remember someone who went through this. A young man with a bright calling, sharp discernment, and a future that everyone could see, except him. One morning, everything in his life simply shifted. He woke up and couldn't decide anything. Should he move forward with an opportunity? Should he take a risk? Should he call someone? Should he start the project he had been preparing for months? Every decision felt heavy. Every thought felt tangled. He wasn't sad. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was just lost. As if someone had blown dust into his mind. He told me, "I feel like something is sitting on my thoughts." And he was right. Something was. Spiritual fog is not random. It is sent. It is intentional. It is a calculated distraction used in occult practice to weaken discernment. In the dark realm, confusion is not merely an emotion, it is a tactic. A fogging, a psychic smudge, a deliberate attempt to silence the inner voice God placed inside you. Witches use it to dull your spiritual senses because the moment you stop hearing direction clearly, you become vulnerable. You start making emotional choices, not spiritual ones. You begin reacting instead of discerning. And once that happens, your destiny becomes easier to manipulate. In their rituals, they do something called a path clouding. It's a technique meant to disturb your inner compass. They don't need to destroy your destiny, they just need to make you uncertain about it. Once uncertainty enters, your movement slows down. Once your movement slows down, your opportunities dry up. And once your opportunities dry up, the door they want to open becomes accessible. That is why the first sign is always confusion, because confusion weakens confidence. But here's what they fear most: clarity. One night, after months of battling this unseen fog, the young man prayed differently. Not a long prayer, not a loud prayer, but a sharp one. A prayer of confrontation, not against fear, but against confusion. He said, "Lord, every hand touching my mind, remove it." And something broke. He told me it felt like a weight lifted off the top of his head. Thoughts that felt heavy became light. Ideas he forgot suddenly returned. Plans started making sense again. Vision came back. He walked into the next week with a level of clarity he hadn't felt in years. Doors that confused him suddenly looked obvious. Opportunities that seemed blurry became precise. That is how you know spiritual fog has lifted. Your direction becomes clean again. If this is speaking to you right now, if you felt this heaviness, this inner fog, this strange loss of direction, comment, "I break confusion." It may be the first sign that your destiny was being watched. But listen carefully. Confusion is only the doorway. The next sign is the real attack. When your destiny is touched, the attack never shows up in the beginning. It shows up at the edge of your blessing. At the final hour. At the moment where everything should finally break open for you. That is why the second sign of spiritual tampering is repeated near breakthrough failures, victories that collapse the moment you are about to touch them. It doesn't start with rejection. It starts with almost. You get the call, but not the job. You get the approval, then a sudden reversal. You get the promise, then silence. Everything moves forward, then falls apart in 24 hours. I once spoke to a man who lived inside this cycle. He was gifted, hardworking, spiritually alert, yet every major opportunity in his life died at the finish line. Not in the middle, not at the beginning. Always at the edge. He would submit applications and get shortlisted instantly. He would pass every interview effortlessly. He would receive verbal confirmations, emails saying congratulations, and even start preparing for the position. But every time, without fail, something mysterious happened. One company suddenly lost his file. Another said the role was frozen at the last minute. Another claimed they decided to go in a different direction. Another simply stopped responding the moment he was supposed to sign. After months of this pattern, fear began to grow in him. Not fear of failure, but fear of something unseen monitoring him. Something that waited until he was at the edge of his blessing, then stepped in to intercept it. He said, "Why does it always break right when it's about to happen?" And I told him the truth. Because some attacks are designed for the final hour. Witches don't waste energy fighting you at the beginning of your journey. They wait until momentum builds, until the door opens, until favor appears. Then they perform what the dark realm calls a final hour interception. It's an occult tactic meant to snatch the result after you've already done the work. They don't need to stop the process. They just need to stop the outcome. They track you spiritually. They monitor your progress, and the moment heaven releases something, they attempt to block its physical manifestation. This is why the pattern feels so frustrating. Because you're not failing. You're being intercepted. This man told me the emotional weight became unbearable. He said it felt like someone was standing between him and his destiny, taking everything that belonged to him. And he wasn't wrong. Destiny tampering often shows up as repeated almosts. Years of labor that end in nothing. It drains your confidence, it weakens your hope, it makes you question yourself, it makes you wonder if you're cursed or invisible or forgotten. But one night during prayer, something shifted. He didn't pray for favor, he didn't pray for opportunity. He prayed a dangerous prayer, a prayer of exposure. He said, "Lord, every hand touching my breakthrough, let it be revealed and removed." He told me that as soon as those words left his mouth, his room felt different. Like something hiding in the shadows suddenly stepped back. For 3 days, he kept praying that prayer. On the fourth day, an opportunity that had fallen through suddenly reopened. On the same week, another company he thought had forgotten him reached out with an apology. Doors that closed began to open, not slowly, but sharply. It was as if the invisible interference had been cut off. That is how final hour attacks are broken. Not with begging, but with exposure. If you've lived through these patterns, if doors collapse whenever you're close to touching them, type "no more losses" in the comments. Sometimes your declaration is your warfare. But listen closely, the third sign. This one doesn't attack your opportunities, it attacks you. It destroys people from the inside. Not all sadness comes from the soul. Some are arrows shot into the mind. There's a kind of heaviness that doesn't grow slowly, it arrives. A weight that drops on you like a blanket of darkness. No trigger. No warning, no explanation. One moment you are fine, and the next, your spirit feels like it has been pushed underwater. That is the third sign of destiny tampering: emotional collapse, sudden depression. A targeted spiritual attack meant to break you from the inside. I once knew a young believer who experienced this. She was disciplined, joyful, spiritually awake. She was the kind of person who encouraged everyone else. But one morning she woke up feeling like something had been drained out of her soul during the night. Not sadness, not stress, something deeper. She opened her eyes and immediately felt a heavy numbness pressing down on her chest. Her mind was blank. Her hope was gone. Her strength felt stolen. She told me, "I don't feel like myself. I feel invaded." And she was right. Witches understand something many believers ignore. Strength is spiritual. Emotional strength is what fuels prayer. Prayer fuels clarity. Clarity fuels destiny. So when they want to weaken someone, they don't always attack the body. They attack the emotions. They shoot what Scripture calls arrows by night. Emotional arrows meant to dim the spirit, drain the fire, weaken the voice, and silence prayer. Because once your emotions collapse, your prayer life collapses with it. This young woman went through it for days. She said she felt like a shadow was sitting on her chest. She didn't want to eat. She didn't want to speak. She didn't want to pray. She felt disconnected from everything, like her joy had been unplugged. She cried without understanding why. She felt an invisible discouragement pushing her down. And the most dangerous part? She blamed herself. She thought something was wrong with her mind, not realizing something had touched her spirit. That's exactly how spiritual emotional attacks work. They hide behind your feelings. They present themselves as just a bad day, when in reality they are assignments, emotional warfare meant to drain your strength so something darker can enter. When witches want access to your destiny, they weaken your emotions first. A weak heart becomes an open gate. A tired spirit becomes a vulnerable spirit. A broken inner world becomes easy to influence. But one night, everything shifted for her. She was sitting on her bed, staring at the wall, feeling that familiar heaviness press down on her. But something inside whispered, "This is not you." And for the first time in days, she forced herself to pray. Not a perfect prayer, not a long prayer, not an emotional prayer, but a desperate one. She said, "God, if this isn't mine, take it off me." That was it. One sentence. One moment of spiritual clarity. She told me it felt like something cracked, like the weight sitting on her chest suddenly slid off. A warmth filled her room, soft but strong. Her mind felt like someone opened a window inside it. Her emotions didn't go back to normal instantly, but the darkness broke. And the next morning, she woke up lighter. Brighter. Herself again. That is how spiritual sadness lifts, not through willpower, but through spiritual confrontation. If you've felt this kind of heaviness, if you've woken up numb, hopeless, or drained for no reason, comment "light enter me" so I know you're still here. Some of you are not fighting your own emotions. You're fighting something sent to break you. But listen carefully. The fourth sign. This one is the sign I feared the most when I was on the other side. Because once this one appears, the battle is no longer subtle. Destiny tampering rarely happens alone. It walks in through people. The spirit realm rarely attacks directly, it prefers doors. And the most effective doors are human ones. That is the fourth sign. Strange people or sudden relationships entering your life right at the moment your destiny begins to rise. I once spoke with someone who experienced this in the most painful way. For years her life was peaceful, her prayer life strong, her mind sharp, her opportunities steady. She wasn't perfect, but she was aligned. And then, out of nowhere, she met someone. A new friend. Innocent at first, friendly, charming, helpful. Someone who understood her. Someone who appeared exactly at the moment her spiritual life was rising. At first, everything seemed harmless, but slowly, quietly, subtly, things shifted. Her peace evaporated. Her dreams darkened. Her prayer life collapsed. Her mind became foggy again. Opportunities that were once open suddenly died without explanation. She told me, "I don't know what happened. I was doing fine until this person came into my life." And I told her something many people never want to hear. Not every person enters your life naturally. Some are assigned. When witches want access to someone, they don't always send an attack through dreams or nightmares. Sometimes they assign a monitoring spirit to work through a person. Someone who drains you, distracts you, pulls you, weakens you. Not always intentionally, not always knowingly. Some people carry spiritual influence without even understanding what they're hosting. But the pattern is always the same. Your life shifts after they arrive. The wrong person can be a spiritual gate. A gate into your emotions, a gate into your choices, a gate into your destiny. Spiritual planting is real. There are people whose presence creates confusion. People who only call when your life is stable, then chaos follows. People whose voice silences your inner voice. People who always show up when you're about to rise. Witches use such connections to monitor progress, steal peace, and weaken discernment. This woman began to notice strange signs. Whenever she planned to pray, that person suddenly needed her attention. Whenever she tried to focus, that person brought drama. Whenever she received good news, that person responded with subtle negativity. Whenever she dreamed of breakthrough, she woke up feeling drained. The final sign was the most telling. Whenever she distanced herself, her peace returned instantly. The day she realized this, she prayed a different kind of prayer. Not a prayer for protection, not a prayer against witchcraft, but a prayer of separation. She said, "God, close every door I didn't open." Within days, that person drifted out of her life as easily as they entered. No fight, no argument, no explanation, just distance, like their assignment had expired. And the moment they left, her life began to return to normal. Her sleep restored, her prayer life rekindled, opportunities reopened, her sense of direction returned, and her spirit felt light again. That's how you know a person was spiritually planted. When leaving them restores what you lost. If this is speaking to you, if someone's presence has been draining your peace, your strength, your clarity, type "no doors open" so I know you're following. Some doors are not meant to stay open, but listen closely. The fifth sign. This is the one witches hope you never notice. Because once you recognize it, their influence breaks instantly. Your dreams reveal who touched your destiny. When the physical world is quiet and your mind is still, the spirit realm speaks. And the clearest sign that your destiny is being tampered with is repeated dream manipulation. I once counseled a believer who went through this night after night. During the day, everything looked normal, nothing unusual, nothing alarming. But the moment she closed her eyes, another world opened, a world she did not understand, but one that understood her. It began with dreams of being chased, not by animals but by faceless shadows, figures that moved fast but never spoke. She told me, "I always wake up right before they catch me." I told her, in dreams, being chased means something is after your destiny, not your body. Then the dreams changed. She began to see herself eating, food she didn't recognize, meals she didn't cook, hands she didn't see offering them to her. She would wake up feeling heavy, tired, spiritually sick. And I explained to her, eating in dreams is one of the clearest signs that someone is feeding your spirit with what God never gave you. Then the dreams shifted again. She found herself walking through old houses she grew up in, houses she had not seen in 15 years. Broken windows, empty hallways, childhood rooms that felt dark and unfamiliar. I told her, returning to old houses in dreams means your destiny is being pulled backward. Someone is trying to rewind your progress. One night, it got worse. She dreamed she was tied. Her hands, her legs, her voice. She struggled but couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't pray. She woke up shaking. That was the moment she realized something was deeply wrong. Another night, she heard her name being called. Softly, but with a tone that did not feel human. She woke up with goosebumps, heart racing, senses alert. And I told her, your name is your identity. When it is called in a dream, your destiny is being summoned. Then came the darkest dream, sexual dreams. Not lust, not pleasure, but violation. Dreams that left her feeling dirty, trapped, spiritually contaminated. She cried and said, I don't understand why this is happening. And I explained, sexual dreams are spiritual covenants. It means someone is trying to claim ownership over your destiny. She even began dreaming of missing documents, certificates vanishing, passports disappearing, doors locked, roads blocked. These were not random images. These were spiritual messages. Destiny tampering always leaves fingerprints in the dream world. Because dreams are not just symbols, they are the spiritual courtroom where destinies are attacked or defended. What touches you in the day affects you temporarily. What touches you in a dream affects you spiritually. Her life started reflecting the dreams. Opportunities disappeared like the missing documents. Her movement felt blocked like the closed roads. Her joy felt tied like her hands in the dream. Her spirit felt violated like the sexual encounter she didn't come to. But one night, everything broke. She was tired, exhausted, weary, weak. She didn't want another dream. She didn't want another attack. She knelt beside her bed and prayed a prayer most believers never pray. A prayer not of protection, but of judgment. She said, every hand touching my dreams break, and something shifted. She felt it instantly, like a wind leaving her room. That night, for the first time in weeks, she slept peacefully. No shadows. No chasing, no voices, no manipulation, no darkness sitting on her chest. She dreamed of light, pure light, an atmosphere that felt clean, warm, safe. The next morning, things started changing in the physical world. A document she lost months earlier resurfaced. A door that had been shut reopened. Her spiritual strength returned, her clarity came back, and the heaviness lifted completely. That is how powerful dream warfare is. When the dream world is restored, the destiny is restored. If you've seen any of these patterns, chasing, eating, backward movement, sexual dreams, lost documents, blocked roads, strange voices, comment, I reject every dream attack. Your declaration matters more than you know. But listen carefully. Knowing the signs is not enough. You must close the door they entered through. Because if the gate stays open, the attack continues. And now, you're about to learn how to close that gate. Before you click away, listen carefully. Because what I'm about to say is the final warning and the final confirmation you've been waiting for. If any part of this message, any dream, any sign, any strange pattern that has been following you, felt familiar, then hear this with your spirit, not your ears. Your destiny is being monitored, not by people, not by coincidence, but by forces that study you quietly, wait for your weakest moments, and try to write a future that God never intended for you. But I need you to breathe, because this is not a message of fear. Fear is the weapon of the enemy. Authority is the language of the spirit, and the realm of the spirit does not respond to fear, it responds to authority. You are not helpless, you are not uncovered, you are not wandering through life with no protection. Every attack that touched your destiny, every dream that was manipulated, every arrow sent in the night, can be reversed. Not by panic, not by crying, but by stepping into the authority that has always been yours. Because when light rises, darkness loses its map. When truth appears, monitoring spirits lose their access. When you speak with authority, every covenant made against you begins to crack. So listen closely now. Even if your heart is beating fast, even if something inside you is trembling, know this. What marked you can be unmarked. What watched you can be blinded. What followed you can be broken. And what delayed you can be forced to release you. You are not standing at the end of your story. You are standing at the turning point of it. And the next thing I'm going to share with you will show you exactly how to shut the gates that were opened against you and take back every piece of destiny that was tracked, stolen, or delayed. Keep listening, because your freedom is already waking up. If you're still here, it means something in your spirit is awakening. So hear this clearly and take it seriously. If you want the prayer that closes every destiny gate which is open, the prayer that shuts monitoring eyes, the prayer that seals the dreams they use to track your future, then watch the next video immediately. Don't postpone it. Don't save it for later. Destiny battles are not fought tomorrow, they're fought now. And I want you to do something that helps more people than you realize. Comment the sign you've seen, even if it was small, even if it was strange, even if it happened years ago. Because when you post it, someone else will read it and suddenly understand they're not crazy, they're not imagining things, they're not alone. Your comment might be the confirmation someone has been praying for. And if you know someone, a friend, a sibling, a spouse, a child, whose destiny feels under attack, share this with them. You might save a future they didn't even know was in danger. Now listen to this final line. Slowly. Let it sink deep into your spirit. Your destiny is not in their hands. It is in God's hands.